So, of course, the big question is, what is a life well lived today? And in the past, we weren't free to choose what we wanted to do. Most people, their lives were decided by the situation of their birth. So what their parents' job was, typically a father passed on his job to his son. If it was the older son, younger sons, in Europe, they became soldiers or were sent away to work, or they went to work, or they went to the church or something like that. So destiny was basically not yours to decide. You effectively had pathways that were decided by society. Families decided who you married, where you lived, or governments, powerful people decided. Of course, modern society is completely different. You're free to be what you want, to think what you want, to say what you want, to study what you want, to work, live where you want, maybe to marry who you want, okay? So with that freedom comes lots of challenges in terms of thinking about what is a good life, okay? And we have many good lives. There's no one good life, even for any one person. I have many ideas myself of what a good life would have been, and there were many difficult times in terms of choosing between options. The more choice we have, sometimes the more challenging it is. Okay, so you hear a lot these days about the idea of authenticity. 日本語で言うとなかなか難しいんですね。よくカタカナにもなるんで、オーセンティシティみたいな。場合によって、例えば本物とか、本心とか、自分らしさとか、様々な使い方もあるんですけどね。だけど、オーセンティシティというのも本当に現代的な悩みと思います。それを一応伝えたいんですね。Today, marketing and in popular culture, a desire for authenticity is often expressed. And we see this in many cases. You go to the combini and say, and it will have, authentic, blah, 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 blah. Okay. So why this notion of authenticity? Well, as I say here in the slides, we have an anxiety about personal efficacy, our ability to choose in decision-making in affluent liberal societies. Every day we have so many choices to make. Some research suggests that we make every day over 100 choices, which is, you think, no, but then you stop to think, okay? Not just walking which way, we have multiple choices. You want to buy a drink, okay? There's 20 or 30 choices in a drink machine, okay? The modern condition is, どっちがいいかな、どうしようとか、迷わずに、okay? 迷わずに選べるのは非常に珍しいね。大体悩むね。悩む人は相当悩む。I take a huge amount of time shopping in the supermarket. My wife always says, oh God, he goes to buy 3 things, he takes 1 hour, okay? I want to compare everything. I'm looking at the different ketchups, looking at the different vegetables, weighing them all up. Everything becomes a source of kind of decision anxiety. So we are, in a sense, spoiled for choice. We have so many choices, and it's quite difficult to have simple decision rules. Of course, when you have no time, you're in a hurry, it's very simple for you, isn't it? The train leaves in 30 seconds, you're thirsty, you just press a button, grab a drink, and you go. Most of the time, we have time to feel anxious, to think these things, and it can be kind of paralyzing. But I think also the hardest part psychologically is not just the choice, it's the fear of regret. 後悔したくないように。自分の何回もちょっと失敗したと思って後悔してて、そしてそういう後悔する時が多いなら、やはり自分のなんていう判断力に対している自信がなくなる。So you're likely to start to lose confidence in your own ability to make choices. And many people say this, hey, if I can't choose between 2 drinks in a machine, how can I choose between 2 jobs? I do shukatsu, I get 2 night day, 3 night day, 4 night day. How do I decide? Actually, this is well researched. Very small choices and very big choices, people don't think too much. Small choices, it's right. どっちでもいいね. Okay. 決めやすい. Which drink, it doesn't matter. The huge choices, who to marry, That's such a big choice that many people just choose in a fairly simplistic kind of way. The middle-sized choices are where people spend lots of time thinking about it. You know, when I was a university student, I worked as a photographer, and I was doing a lot of wedding photographs, lots of weddings. 非常に結婚式の仕事をして写真家として。And we always used to joke as wedding photographers when we saw the bride. The bride said, I think she spent more time picking the dress or picking the flowers than she did picking the guy. Beautiful dress, very, very bad groom, very bad husband. And amongst the photographer and the other staff in the wedding center, we would always say, how long do you think this will last? No, maybe give him 6 months, give him a year, give him 2 years. It's like, why is she marrying this loser? Okay, this was the typical kind of conversation. But that's actually a very understandable thing. It's such a huge, overwhelming choice that people often reduce it to a very simplistic kind of way. Toss a coin, pull just simple decision rules, pull the petals off a flower or something and try and make a choice. So that is part of the anxiety here. But I think there's another aspect of here too, and that is we're afraid of being taken advantage of. Damasaretakunai, botokuraretakunai. Okay, so that psychologically is another thing that's working there. We don't want to be treated like idiots by other people. Because if we're deceived, we lose our confidence to make a choice. Even just a simple thing. あんな簡単な選択で騙されて失敗したダメ人間の僕がどうやって大きな選択できるかどうか。So that fear of not being able to act in your own interests is, I think, a really significant psychological pressure. Now, of course, many societies solve this through their parents. Parents just, as you say in Japanese, reiro hite, lay some tracks and get you to run along those tracks. But over time, and I know because I have a 30-year-old, I have a 25-year-old, I have a 14-year-old. My 14-year-old son still basically does what I suggest. My 25-year-old, no. My 30-year-old, absolutely not. But she's happy. That's good. Okay. So in the past, parents would basically pressure their kids to run, give them lots of advice. The problem is, and our big topic today is a world of disruption. The world is changing rapidly. So out of complete respect for your parents and teachers and whatnot, but the world has changed so rapidly that the experience of your parents and teachers of their generation when they were making choices isn't so useful as a guide to action now. And this is something I find repeatedly talking with my zemisei, for example, that they're often caught like sandwich torte between their parents' expectations about what is a good job, what is a good career, and what they want to do, and also their sense of how the world has changed very dramatically. Okay, so one of the things I say to students is, unless your dad or your mum works in Jinjibu of a big company, or is like a manager in a venture or something, respect them, listen to their opinion, but get a second opinion, get a third opinion, get a fourth opinion, because the world is changing increasingly rapidly. So in short, freedom to choose brings choice anxiety. Modern individuals' self-felt responsibility for their own life choices sometimes feels like a bit of a burden. Now, philosophers have been talking about this for quite a long time. This is Søren Kierkegaard. He's from Denmark, and he wrote in the early 19th century, early 19th century, and he spoke early 19th century. And he wrote a lot about these basic challenges of how to be true to yourself as society gives you more choices. Now, different philosophers responded in different ways with this around the idea of authenticity. German philosophers in the 19th century were focused on the relationship between the individual, their values, their culture, their language, and their nation. And this was a time of German nationalism, cultural identity emerging after the Napoleonic Wars. There were many fragmented German states. So the German-speaking states came together. They created a new citizenship of Germany, for example, with the unification of Germany. And there was this strong sense that through your native tongue and your culture, you realized yourself. 自分の母国語とか文化で実現できる。So the idea of authenticity was completely tied to being in a certain culture, a place, and a nation. And as we go through the 19th century, the philosophers increasingly emphasized the nation. An authentic life was acting for the nation. And we see Fichte advocated this, and it ended up finally in a very bad place, associated with a very influential philosopher, Martin Heidegger. And I want to show you this. Martin Heidegger, famous philosopher, he's wearing a little Nazi German badge. He was a professor of philosophy, and he joined the Nazi party. And intellectually, and you notice the mustache like Hitler? Okay, he's kind of like the Hitler's philosopher in some respects. Later on, he said, I wasn't a Nazi, but then this photo appeared. So Heidegger and others came to see their self-achievement, their self-realization through the nation. And the authentic self as a German would mean even sacrificing yourself for the national project. Of course, after World War II and the horrors of Nazism were realized, the racism, the Holocaust, the destruction of the Jewish people, for example, we realized that combining your authentic self as one with the nation was a disastrous path for individuals and for the nation and for third country citizens. Now, we go a long way. At some point, we say the 1960s, a reaction to the Vietnam War and whatnot, we get hippie culture. And so the hippies are the very opposite. They're living for themselves, their own way. And I'm interested a little bit in this period. I'm 58, so I was born in 1967, okay? This is Time magazine in 1967. My parents weren't hippies, okay? But this is kind of peak hippie when I was born, okay? Even the Soviet Union, Soren, had hippies, okay? It was a guru from Estonia. And the Communist Party and the KGB didn't like hippies, just like conservative politicians in the United States and Australia and other places didn't like hippies. That was kind of peak hippie fashion in 1967 when I was born. Now, you know, it just looks like a trend in a certain time and place. And now it's just become retro. So you can go online, Amazon and whatnot, and buy hippie costumes, okay? On Insta, there is, I am a hippie, okay? People acting like hippies. So it just became another trend. So what is an authentic hippie? Actually, these are not authentic hippies. These are recent influencers faking hippie, okay? And it's okay, it's a fun fake. And we know, because he's wearing skinny jeans, and his sneakers are very kind of modern, okay? So it's not authentic kind of hippie. Of course, when everybody dresses the same way to be individualistic, is that really authentic, okay? You know, so if you become a punk and you have your hair in a very punk kind of fashion, are you being a rebel? But everyone together is acting in the same kind of way as rebels. So, you know, I was in university in the 1980s, so punk fashion was kind of big. But is that really personal authenticity or just another trend belonging to its age? Some of you may know of Nietzsche, a very famous 19th century German philosopher. He argued in a very different way from others. He had no patience for extreme nationalism. Some people misunderstood him. He had a great moustache. I can't do that. Okay, my grandfather and great-grandfather were German, so I've got some German genes, but I can't do the big moustache thing. Now, Nietzsche's view was, it's a bit of a difficult concept. He said, there is no pure, authentic self. で本格的な自分、もとも自分の本心、ピュア、なんか生まれつきの自分のキャラクターとか性格は、っていうのはない。様々な影響もある。We're influenced by society as a whole. But he said, we don't want to be someone who keeps changing, okay? You know, like looking in all different directions, like the Happo Beijing kind of thing, you know? We don't want that. So he said, 一応、勝手に、自分の性格、パーソナ、価値観とか、ちょっと決めて、そのままずっと守って。ほんま、ランダムでもいいけど、とにかく何かを選んで、自分のアイデンティティを決めてて、そして、安定的にそのアイデンティティを守りなさい、作りなさいみたいな。In a modern kind of way, it's kind of like fake it till you make it. Okay? So it's a shocking idea. It's completely inauthentic in a sense. He's saying basically there is no such thing as authenticity. We can move ourselves from one place to another. You know, if I come to live in Japan, I change myself because I have a lot of new influences. My tastes change. Okay, so what is the part of me that stays constant? My view, my suggestion is, well, the only thing that's constant is my brain, my basic structure of my personality, my body that I carry my head in, okay, and my ability to think about how I'm on a journey, on a path, and how I'm changing myself, and to consciously change myself. So if there's something I don't like about myself, I will try to change that, okay, in a positive kind of way. So it's a story of personal growth and very deliberate kind of personal growth. Okay. Now, I think we should take very seriously in some ways, the notion of authenticity, because of course, in an era of social media, there's so much faking out there. Of course, politics, we have so much fake news now. Donald Trump just says anything, just whatever suits him. So is there no truth anymore? Okay, are we completely disconnected from that? So I think that notion of authenticity is important. But there's also another really important reason. More and more companies are going back to, in a sense, a very 18th century idea that we should perform a certain role 100%. So I don't know if you know about this, but Aeon, the supermarket chain, the world's first company to use AI to measure attitudes of customer-facing employees. So Aeon employees have an app to train their smile, okay? 営業スマイルの練習するためにね。You know, so some people are very good at the 営業 smile. Some people just can't do it. Okay, then smile. Have you heard about this smile clubs? People who meet and practice smiles for like 15 minutes or half an hour. The idea is if I make myself smile, I can make my brain feel happy. That is impossible for my wife. You know, if I say to her, smile, she won't. No, she hates to have anything. もう無理やりになんかさせられるのめっちゃ嫌いで、すごく機嫌悪くなる。So when I saw this news, I said to my wife, do you want to do this? It's like, やだ。絶対にやだ。Okay. She's a very tsundere kind of type, right? It's like, okay. That's her personality. Now, this is a really big challenge for companies. This was the recent news back in March. I'll just simply read it to you. Starbucks, the CEO of Starbucks said, all the barista must write a nice message to the customers on their coffee cups. Okay, and he said, we want to have moments of connection. 一人一人のお客さんと、なんていう、絆、なんていう、つなぎを作りましょう。Okay, so really busy staff members have to think of something original to write on all of the Starbucks cups. Okay, and the staff hate it because it feels so fake. And more, maruru逆の効果, because what happened was employees started writing a whole range of crazy things. 強制的に一人一人のお客さんに、なんていう、いい、本当の気持ちを込めて、メッセージを書きなさいと言われてて。So we get lots of crazy things. So this is like Must I write this? Okay. And then this one wrote, my sister had a baby and I took it over after she passed away and the baby lost all its legs and arms and now is just a stump. But I'm going to raise it with my wife. Okay. So you get your coffee cup and the staff members written on this, okay? お姉さんが子供産んで、お姉さんが死んで、そして赤ちゃんの両腕、両足もなくなって、もう丸太のようなものにしかなってないけど、仕方がなくて育ててあげるみたいな。It's like completely damaged the kind of the Starbucks brand. And of course, it went absolutely viral on TikTok. So in this modern era, it's very, very difficult to force people to fake it. At the same time, people very often individually fake it on Instagram or TikTok or whatever. They're faking their persona, but they're choosing to fake it. Okay, disruption. Oh, excuse me. I need some Waseda water. Okay, Waseda brand is everywhere. Waseda High School, Waseda University, Waseda water. But I have to buy it myself. Okay. Disruption. You'll hear a lot about disruption. I'm just going to talk about a few basic forces of disruption. You know, globalization. Globalization changing economic power and centers of economic strength and dynamism. That's part of it. And digital transformation, DX, digital transformation, we hear about this endlessly. And the other big transformation, aging societies, birth rates declining, populations are getting older, fewer young people. That's good and bad for you guys, mostly good. I'm going to emphasize that it's actually good. So this is going to be very quick, but you have the slides. First of all, 1995, Japan looked like one of the most powerful economies around. Okay. I lived in Japan a bit before then. I went back to Australia and then I returned in 2004 when this faculty was created. Okay. Now, of course, Japan is relatively, it's not poorer, it's still richer, but other countries in total have become obviously clearly much larger economies. So we have the rise of India, of China very substantially, America still very substantial. Actually, Australia's gotten a bit bigger, which is kind of nice, but I can't afford to live in my own country. It's too expensive these days. So Japan as a nation economically, it is less important in the total economy. But that is not a problem for you guys, okay? Lots of journalists talk about how this is terrible for the future. No, it's not. It just means other people also got richer. And good luck to them, good. Okay, the last 30 years, hundreds of millions of Chinese have dramatically improved their lives. And that is a very good thing, and we should be very glad for it. And Japan has benefited in many ways too. At the same time, we need to change our view of the world, how Japan relates to the world. Here's the very thing. Japan falling behind Taiwan and South Korea, GDP per capita. Now, GDP per capita, 人当たりの GDP、台湾と韓国の方が日本より高くなってる。Okay. But many older Japanese don't imagine this. I hate to say it, but it's true. Still, some people tend to look down a little bit on some of our Asian neighbors. Singapore has long had a higher GDP per capita. Korea has now overtaken Japan and Taiwan too. And we see this. Inbound tourism, for example, is absolutely booming. But that's okay, because I'm going to emphasize that, yes, Japan is no longer in GDP per capita terms one of the richest countries in the world. However, you still have huge opportunities yourselves, both internationally and domestically, and also some of the advantages of Japan's economy being flat for many years, maybe not so obvious, but can give you very strong lifestyle advantages. Okay, digitization, digital transformation. We all hear about this all the time, ChatGPT, LLMs, AI. I just simply want to show a statistic. This is the World Digital Competitiveness Ranking 2024. Japan is only 31. Unfortunately, only 31. Now, actually, Japan is number one for users being user readiness. だから、デジタル生活、なるべくデジタルで、日常の生活にデジタルのアップとか、一番使いたがっているのは日本ですよ。みんな携帯持ってて、基本的に皆さんが、できれば全てのことを携帯でやりたがっている。Okay? So they want to shop, they want to do their travel plans, they want to do their homework, they want to do everything, okay, on their phone. They're ready. Japanese really are ready for digitization. The problem is we don't have the staff, okay, don't have the technicians. Japan is about, is it here? Okay, the number here, it's training and education is about 20. Talent, 53, okay? Japan just doesn't have the people. And what this means is there is a huge gap between Japanese people's desire to embrace digitization and the ability of Japanese companies and Japanese society to meet those expectations. And this is one of the biggest challenges. And it's the most extreme gap of all countries. One solution, large numbers of talented foreign workers. Okay, and it's sort of happening. Another solution, offshoring to places like India, but that in itself requires talented people. Now, the next disruption. The world has dramatically changed from 1850 to 2020 here, simply with this is the total fertility rate. I think in Japanese, do you say shusanetsu? Shishu. Okay, thank you. Right. So we see that a bunch of countries used to be up around 4, 5, 6. My grandfather, my paternal father, had 10 brothers and sisters. Okay, so that was quite common. Okay, Korea 30 years ago, the average, or 40 years ago, the average was still over 5. Okay, so everywhere birth rates have dramatically declined. But in a subset of countries, they've declined much more than others. So the rate of decline and very recent analysis, and I put the details here, you can read this. One of the authors here of this, Golden, she won the Nobel Prize for Economics last year. She analyzed in very great detail why the birth rate declined much more in some places. Okay, and we'll do a close-up and we'll see why. Okay, oops. Oh, that's out of order, sorry. ChatGPT, yeah. Should have shown that before. Okay, so Korea and Japan had some of the highest and some of the most dramatic declines, okay, in the last century. So Korea definitely the highest, Japan definitely second highest compared to a whole range of other countries and in a dramatic decline. Okay, so I won't read that. This is my simple summary of the research. Her explanation is very simple, okay? That Korea, a group of countries, Korea, Japan, most notably, Taiwan to some degree, Singapore is there in the data, also places like Greece and Italy and others, especially after World War II, they had very rapid economic growth. The economy grew very, very rapidly. They became much more affluent, but people's values didn't change, especially men's values didn't change as rapidly as the economy changed. And also culturally, the society changed because the societies became much richer. So the analysis is very simple. Men were slow to learn to help with housework and caring for kids. So women increasingly didn't want more kids, okay? Basically, what happened is rapid urbanization, richer societies, women became in a stronger position economically and socially, and men didn't start to suddenly embrace being a dad, doing housework, cooking, cleaning, and whatnot. And so women increasingly, despite the fact that they had modern washing machines and microwaves and all these kind of things, basically said 1 or 2 kids is enough. One's enough, maybe 1, okay? And a lot of men were not so happy, but they kind of accepted it because there were certain advantages. They could basically live in a cheaper house or live in a small apartment closer to work. And so it was kind of a trade-off. The really interesting thing is, although all societies, they decline, the ones that declined least are societies where men changed their values. Men came to accept the joys of raising children, sometimes of being a full-time dad while their wife worked, okay, of shopping, of cooking, of caring for the house, the home. And what do we see? That actually societies like Denmark and Sweden, the birth rate stayed higher because in the Nordics, Hokkwo, men were much more accepting of a change in gender roles and came to enjoy parenting. For me, it's one of the greatest joys was actually having kids. And then an interesting thing turns up. We look at the happiness ranking, okay? Every year this comes out, the happiness index 2025. And every year we see Denmark, Finland, Norway, Sweden, the Netherlands, and then New Zealand and Australia and others are very, very high in terms of the happiness ranking. You might be surprised to see Israel. Israel is always very high in happiness ranking. Yeah, there's an ongoing intense war there, and Israel's attacked all young guys like you. In Israel, young man and young women, 18, you finish high school, you go to the military. If you're a man, you go to the military for 3 years. If you're a woman, you go for 2 years. Okay, this is completely normalized. Right now in the middle of a war, and yet levels of happiness are very, very high. Why? Both in Arab communities and in Jewish communities, whether it's ultra-Orthodox or modern, very strong acceptance of family, of personal relationships, and strong support for families. And the birth rate is still very, very high in a place like Israel. Unfortunately, Japan is ranked 55, South Korea 58, China 68. Now, some of you may be thinking, what is happiness? Okay. And this often is the case when you survey Japanese, and they say, are you happy? Well, okay. How many of you, are you happy? 幸せですか? と聞かれたらどう? Happy? Are you happy? Good.
I'm sleepy.
Happy and sleepy. That's okay. Yep. Okay. The unhappy can't sleep. And sleepiness is a sign of happiness. And very unhappy people normally can't sleep. Okay, that's the problem. Too many worries. Okay, so sleepiness is a privilege. Okay, I sleep very well, and my wife gets very annoyed about that. No, I sleep in 30 seconds, and she's like, she wants to wake me up again because she can't sleep. No. And then I say to her, that's because you don't do enough. You're not tired enough. I'm tired, right? So I can sleep, okay. And then she gets very angry. And then I shut up and say, sorry. Okay, so there's definitional problems. When you survey Japanese and ask them about happiness, they often say, 幸せってなんだろう? Okay, what is happiness? Okay, well, actually on the survey, the way they do this is interesting. They say, imagine a ladder, okay? And there's 10 rungs, and the 10 is the highest possible, okay? And down the bottom, you're not even on the ladder, means terrible life. Where do you imagine you are? And what's interesting is that Danes and Finns, Norwegians, Swedes, put themselves up around 7 or 8, near the top of the ladder. Almost nobody says I'm a 10. You know, I'm not the prime minister, I'm not a billionaire, I'm not super rich. But the idea is this ladder of my possible lives. Imagine lots of possible lives you could have. And then where are you on the ladder of possible lives? And most people in Finland, Norway, Sweden say, I'm between 7 and 8. Now, some critics say that's because they have low expectations. You know, I have an English colleague who just simply says, you know, in Finland, if you ask the Finns, are you happy in Finland? They open the window, they look out and say, the Russians aren't attacking. Okay, I'm happy. Okay, because they have a very, very bad history of being invaded by the Russians. They had a civil war. The weather's really bad. Okay. Now, America generally rates lower, much lower in terms of happiness. And the explanation is two things. One, there's a lot of homeless people. Okay. So there's a lot of people who are, well, good reasons for thinking they're unhappy. The problem is there are also some super rich people, sometimes become president, you know, like Donald Trump, right? Okay, so the billionaires are kind of helping to, you know, Donald Trump run the country in interesting ways. Okay, so in America, people can imagine very easily being fabulously rich or being homeless. In the American context, you know, if you lose your job, you lose your health insurance, you lose your pension, you can go from middle class to homeless. It's quite possible in America. That is not possible in Finland or Sweden or Norway. You lose your job, the government will give you a significant part of your prior income. They will give you housing support. No one is homeless in Helsinki, okay? If you're sleeping in the street, government officials come along, they help you into a shelter and they help you find housing, okay? So people can't imagine themselves being down the bottom, but also they're very modest. You know, they never expect to be a billionaire. And so this interesting thing psychologically happens where, for good and bad. If you have lower expectations, then it's easier to feel happy. We have an expression in English, you know, an old expression, is my glass half full, is my glass half empty? I was talking to an ultra-Orthodox Jewish guy in Tel Aviv in Israel, and he said, glass half full, glass half empty. It's simple. Get a smaller glass, okay? So if you shrink your expectations, you feel better about your life. So if you expect, let's be honest, if you expect because you're in Waseda to then come to Waseda University and because you went to Waseda to then get a great job in a company and you join this company and because you went to Waseda, definitely you're going to be Kacho, Butcho, right? And then maybe Shacho one day, okay? If you expect an elite course path, and that doesn't happen, then you might end up feeling very, very unhappy. You know, they often say, you know, idiots are happy, right? Maybe they didn't have high aspirations or whatever, or they don't imagine that there's so many bad things happening in the world. But I think, and this is a huge conversation now, in our certifying high achieving educational societies, we make even the winners in that system quite unhappy. There's a huge number of books being published now about the meritocratic myth. Yale professors, Princeton professors writing about the burden we give young people. You get into a top high school, then you get into a top university, people expect you to do amazing things in a very narrow kind of way. They expect you to go to Goldman Sachs or Morgan Stanley or, you know, to be CEO or somewhere. And you want to do something different. You want to run an ice cream shop. People say you're a failure. You know, but if you leave school at 15 and you run an ice cream shop and even you become, you know, people say, wow, terrific. He found his thing. He's happy. Good. Okay. So much of the happiness and the measure of happiness is our own mental model. What do we actually expect and what do we think we deserve? Now, I'm going to say that there are some very positive things about Japan. Even if the economy is weaker, growth rates are weaker. My country is Australia is one of the most popular countries for migrants. The economy has grown bigger than others. The GDP per capita is very high, but I can't go back to Australia. I will die in Japan. Okay. Die on tatami. The hardest to afford a home, Hong Kong and then Sydney. Okay, even New Zealand, Melbourne. Real estate prices are crazy high. Before I came to Waseda, when our faculty was created in 2004, I sold a little house I had. Big mistake. Because the guy I sold it to sold it last year. He did nothing to it. He even used the pictures I used when I sold it to him. He reused the pictures. He did nothing to it. He sold the same house for 3 times what I sold it for, which means if I go back to my own country now, I cannot return to anything like the lifestyle I had when I left. I would feel like I've gone back physically. Now, there's other nice things in Australia, but I feel like I might have to live in a tent, okay? So no one wants to feel like they've gone backwards. By the way, this is the best predictor of happiness or unhappiness, not just as an individual, but towards the government. If people feel they're going backwards, they get pretty angry. Revolutions, coups d'etats, political protests normally start when people's hopes and aspirations are frustrated, when they feel they're going backwards. We naturally want to go forwards. The trick is to expand your definition of going forwards. If you have a very narrow path and your goal and you don't get there, you'll be frustrated. If you have a very wide horizon and you go in unexpected directions, you will feel like you're growing amazingly. So I want to share you a couple of examples. First of all, Tokyo. This is a headline story from the New York Times, okay? The big city where housing is still affordable. Let me read you this, just the headline. In progressive cities where may be too critical of private initiative, said Christian Dimmer, an urban studies professor at Waseda University and a long-time Tokyo resident. I don't want to advocate a neoliberal perspective, but in Tokyo, good things have been created through private initiative. In Tokyo, some Kokyu mansion have become a little bit more expensive around here, but that's a kind of tomobataraki kind of phenomenon. People want to live in the city. But actually, real estate is relatively cheap in Tokyo. Christian Dimmer is a very good colleague. He teaches here in SILS. He teaches architecture and urban studies. Great guy. If you come here, take his classes. Okay, so this is a headline story in the New York Times. We can learn from Tokyo. Sydney can learn from Tokyo. Okay, now if you get out of Tokyo, maybe some of you know about this. This is in Echigo Yuzawa. I have an apartment in this building, okay? If you want one, you can get 49 square meter apartment, okay? 9th floor near the ski field for 300 man. Has anyone been to Echigo Yuzawa? Okay, skiing, snowboarding? Right. Anyone been to Naiba? Okay, Naiba is near Echigo Yuzawa. You can buy, okay, in this apartment here, okay, in Naiba, 78 square meter apartment, 90万円. Okay, and if we read it, okay, it's got a whole bunch of things. It's onsen, okay, and お部屋にインターネットの使用は無料です. Okay, so you don't need to be homeless if you can pay just the kanrihi. Okay, so Japan, you don't have to worry about your future like this. You in Australia, you can't get a dog kennel for 90万, even 300万. Okay. Literally, lots of people end up homeless just simply because the real estate is crazily expensive. Japan has a huge number of akiya, for example. If you go out in the countryside, they will give you a house for free. So the good life, it's many things. It's good stuff, it's good work, it's making things, it's good days, it's good relationships. And that's up to you. Okay, I just want to show a couple of pictures, first of all. That's my mother's father, okay? Now, when he was young, he was a cool dude, and he wanted, this is in the 1930s, he really wanted a motorbike, loved the motorbike. His motorbike gave him freedom to travel, freedom to work. He was able to take a job and train as a carpenter, Daiksan, because he could travel elsewhere. And freedom to meet my grandmother and take my grandmother on dates as well. So the bike gave him his good life. Okay, that's my father's father. Unfortunately, my mother's father I never knew. He died before I was born. But my father's father, I knew him very well. He was my hero. He was actually a boxing and a wrestling champion. He was the most gentle man I have ever met. the strongest man I've ever known and the most gentle man I've ever known. He was forced to fight against Japan in World War II in Bougainville. This is just after he came back from the war. This was a very old car at the time, but again, he wanted the car. That's the small amount of money. He survived the war, came back, got the car. He could take my dad, who was a baby at the time, and his older brother and my grandmother, could take them out in the country, could work. That was his sense of the good life. It enabled him, what allowed him to achieve the things that he wanted to do. Okay, now, I think we love the joy of the ride. Before World War II, my father's father, he had a motorbike and he loved it. When the war started, the army took it off him, okay? They forcibly took it off him. They painted it green, okay? And then when he was in the army, he was a dispatch rider at times. My idea of riding, I don't own a car. I have a bicycle. I have 10 snowboards, okay? And I have a nice remote workspace in that apartment block. I paid 400 won for it. So I came to Japan, I sold my house, I made a bit of money, I lost it in the share market, and I thought, stupid, stupid, stupid. I can't go back to Australia. Real estate prices have gone crazy. But I have a whole beautiful apartment that has a daihyokujo, sauna, and whatnot, 400 won. Every time I tell Australians 40,000, they're like, no, you make a mistake, 400,000. Must be at least 400,000. No, $40,000. Look, I'll show you. Every Australian I show is like, I want to buy one, send me the link. Just yesterday, I had a professor come from the University of Queensland, and she said, Chris, send me some website links. I really want to buy either a house at Izu or an apartment in a ski field. Do you think I can get one for maybe 100,000, 200? I said, you can get a palace for 200,000. Okay. She says, oh, I love this country. It's crazy. Okay. She was an exchange student in Kyushu when she was a high school student. So that's her kind of dream to come to Japan. So I never expected this. I had never skied, never snowboarded before I came to Japan. And I came to Japan, it's like, what can I do in Australia? Well, I can enjoy the snow. I turned out to love it. Turned out to be okay at it too, okay? That outside my apartment, it's a 3-minute walk. I go out of my building, I walk up 2 or 3 minutes, get my pass, put the bindings on, get on the lift. Every morning, snowboard a bit, go inside, work, have a bath, have a sauna, do some more work. In the night, I go out again. Wonderful life. I never want to leave Japan, okay? Except in Tsuyu. No, I hate the kind of the rainy season. Okay, that's the view from my apartment. That's the kind of the snow, okay? So my unexpected good life. Now, you'll hear about lots of companies wanting to sell the good life to you through stuff. Okay, you can get the good life through getting, we have in English the expression, the good stuff, okay? And you'll see it everywhere. Selling many different things, podcasts, various things. I even saw this, the good stuff, zucchini. Okay, now, who likes zucchini? Bimyo. When I was a kid, I hated zucchini. So the idea that zucchini could be the good stuff, like the good life, now I love zucchini. But that's because when I went to Italy, I realized that Australians were cooking zucchini in a really, really, really bad way. They just boiled it. It's just boiled zucchini is horrible. But zucchini rubbed with a little olive oil and garlic and bacon and grill it, superb, okay? So very often, just by learning, your idea of what is the good life can change quite dramatically. Now, I'm sure none of you know this, Rosella. It's like a hibiscus. This makes the world's best jam. The one thing I always want when I go home to Australia is Rosella jam. Now, a couple of companies, small companies make it, but it's really difficult to make. My mum knows I love it, so she always finds the rare fruit and makes it ready for me. So every time I go home, and actually Mum called me 2 days ago and she said, I got the Rosellas, I've made the jam, so you have to come home. And I will. It's like, okay, I'll be back in August, okay? So this for me is a really big thing, you know, and my mum is a fantastic jam maker. She was a cooking teacher, so she's really, really good at it. Okay. But when you travel, your tastes change, okay? So when I came to Japan, my idea of the good has changed. In Australia, as a kid, at lunchtime, every day I ate a meat pie. Okay, very bad. I've still got the fat cells. What do I love now in Japan? Favorite food, mentaiko. Okay, who likes mentaiko? Mentaiko lover? Okay, tarako? Mentaiko ha? Tarako ha? Ah, okay. どっちもや? 微妙? 微妙. Right. Okay. Now, I loved tsukemono, Japanese tsukemono. Some Australians I know don't like tsukemono. But you know, when I was a little kid, my father loved pickled onions. Has anyone had an English-style pickled onion? No? So when I was a little kid, my dad used to eat the pickled onions with cheese. It's a very English thing or an Australian thing. And when I was a little kid, my dad said, Chris, would you like a lolly? Lolly, candy hoshi. And he used to give me pickled onions. And it was very strange when I was a kid. I would always say, you know, Daddy, can I have a lolly? And he would always like give me pickled onions. And everyone and all the family friends and the neighbors thought this was so weird. I thought that lollies were pickled onions. Okay. Eventually, some kids gave me actual lollies, candy, right? But I've always loved spaimono, right? Okay, so when I came to Japan, it's just heaven. It's just like pickle okoku. So your experience when you're young can make it easier for you to accept new experiences in unexpected kind of ways. And that's one thing I've always done with my kids, try to give them lots of different foods so they can be adventurous. You know, in our faculty, everyone must go abroad for a year. It's very interesting. I was in Ryugak Center for years as an advisor, as an extra job. Many of the students who aren't happy overseas, the main thing they say is the food was the problem. その食生活は合わなかったとか、食べ物が合わなかった。Okay. And I actually have an idea for a research project just to ask people who are happy overseas, when you were a kid, did you eat lots of different kinds of foods? My mum was a cooking teacher, so she had made so many different kinds of foods from different cultures. And I'm so grateful to her. So I think a lot of our personality is shaped by those kind of like micro kind of experiences when we're young. Now, my mum loves yuzu. Every time I go back to Australia, you know, she says, you know, your Rosella jam is waiting and bring me some yuzu products, okay? So that's her request, okay? And she learned to love yuzu by coming to Japan. I took her to Ippudo on Masada Dori, and she loved the yuzu kosho. そこでハマっちゃって、Ippudoで、だから必ず柚子胡椒はうちの母に買ってあげる。So, I'm going to say that Japan really can and has shown how you can be open to influence, 様々な影響を受けて, but you keep your own values and tastes, and then you can create something new. Just to give you a simple example, mentaiko pasta. You know, Japan is wonderful. It's a traditional mentaiko, and it takes pasta from Italy, makes mentaiko pasta. Now, for mentaiko lovers like me, great. You know, there are restaurants in Sydney which serve mentaiko pasta for like $50. It's like premium gastronomy. You know, 5000円ぐらいにもするね。Whereas in Japan, it's like super simple, right? You just boil some pasta, you just get some even from the kombini mentaiko is not bad, and you can make it yourself. And of course, so much creativity. You take Pretz, which was originally a kind of German-American kind of thing with a distinctive brand. Lots of Chiki gente, Kikan gente kind of products, mentaiko. And I think we can learn something from Japan's potechi culture. Okay, I got these images from the Karubi website. All of these different Japanese kind of flavors. Okay, shoyu, mayo. Okay, let's even just within the mentaiko. So we've got mentaiko, we've got aburi mentaiko. Okay, aburi mentaiko. We've got tarako for the people more tarako-ha. Okay, yuzu kosho. All of these kind of things. So you take basically a foreign product, which was originally French and in an American mass-produced product, you bring the unique Japanese flavor to it. So you can just be like potechi, okay? Japanese, bring your own unique kind of flavors to it, and also interact with the world at large and change. Okay, so we've got lots of regional identities as well. And then this wonderful Japanese kind of hybridity on. So shio caramel, okay, pizza, we all know this one, it's a really popular, right? Various cheeses and whatnot. Foreigners often say it's amazing that the Japanese potato chips with Western style flavors like cheese taste better than the Western company's product. Okay, so Japan has this great ability to be really hybrid. Ebi tomato cream, aji, and they're always bringing out new interesting ones. Okay, so whatever you want to be, let's use it as a metaphor for your own good life. Okay, 自分の将来、自分の将来の道とかとポテチも本当に選べるのは自由でしょう。Okay, so whatever suits your particular kind of tastes, and you can make it up yourself. So to make it maybe useful for you, here's a few suggestions, a few hints in seeking your good life in a disrupted world. Okay, enterprising, I'm not quite sure how to translate it into Japanese. You often hear about, to be enterprising is like to establish a company or something like that. But it's a much wider, it shows initiative, to start a new project, to do something. We say in English to have get up and go, to show initiative. And I really encourage you just to disrupt markets, to disrupt norms, expectations, cultures by promoting your good thing, your idea, your solution. Okay, don't hold back. You've got a unique idea, share it, challenge people. The world changes, and it only changes because people say, I got a better way of doing this, okay? So those people who are more confident to express their idea, to bring their new idea, they can have a very successful life out of it. If you're in New Zealand and a little town called Nelson and bored, which is quite possible because it's a little town, okay, you can go to Peanut Butter World, okay? Yeah, there's a whole attraction, Peanut Butter World. And this guy called Pick decided he thought the peanut butter in New Zealand wasn't very good. So he was a migrant and he decided to make pure peanut butter, okay? And now this is the most loved peanut butter brand in New Zealand, and he exports it all over the world. I buy it on Amazon and it cost me 1,200 yen for the New Zealand crunchy peanut butter, okay? And I used this in the introduction to business class, and some of the students had studied in New Zealand, went, okay. So they know this. And this guy, Pixar, he's really famous as like the peanut butter man. Okay, so wherever he goes, it's like, hey, love your peanut butter, dude. So that's become his persona, his identity. It's like, this is like Nietzsche said, pick something and make it yours. So he became the peanut butter man, and he's in a happy place. Okay, so whatever it is, maybe go to Europe, be Mentaiko-san or whatever, I don't know. Now, I want to emphasize attention because I think we live in a world, I even wrote a book chapter on a few things about this. We live in a world of attention scarcity. Our phones, our devices, they're always trying to grab our attention. And increasingly, our attention span is really, really short, okay? By the way, you've only got many of the slides you don't have because of copyright reasons, okay? So I didn't want to distribute the copies for legal reasons, okay? So what I just want to encourage you is, in our modern culture, our constantly attracted and distracted culture, we need to go back to looking carefully, to paying attention, to concentrating, okay? So maybe you have this experience, maybe your mum gets angry at you, maybe you get angry at your mum's talking at you or you're talking at your mum and you're on your phone. And when your mum goes, 聞いてる? 聞いてるよ. Okay, 半分しか聞いてないね. And you may think you can do multitasking, listening to music, okay, being on your phone and studying. You can't. Psychologists have researched this in very, very thorough detail, okay? You can't multitask. That's why you're not allowed to drive and talk on a mobile phone at the same time. If you are riding your bicycle in the traffic, or on the kick scooter or the e-scooter, like I came here this morning, and there's some dude riding on the scooter and went in front of the taxi I was in. I'm like, idiot, what's he doing? And as the taxi driver finally overtook him, he's got his buds in and he was so close to dying and he didn't even realize, okay? He nearly got run over by the taxi, okay? Because he pulled out right in front of him, okay? I know, he thinks he's paying attention. You don't know what you don't know in those kind of cases where you're ubiquitously distracted. So cultivating the ability to concentrate is an important thing. Maybe go do some zazen, right? Get hit with a stick. Just learn the focus, okay? Be modest and attentive seeing of the world, but also the most important thing is self-understanding. Remember, I said in the beginning, the modern dilemma is we're not sure about how to make choices about what we want to be, what we want to do. We have so many choices. So good choices start with being honest about yourself, okay? If before you get married, understand you. It's very simple. If deep down you know you are gay, don't marry a woman. Lots of people have done this. I have many, I'm an older guy, many friends who are not comfortable admitting that they were gay, couldn't tell their family, they married. Very unhappy. All of them ended up divorced, okay? Very painful for their wife or their ex-wife. So even on the most fundamental thing, I think our society now accepts that we're all very different. Once upon a time, society didn't accept this. So now self-truth, self-understanding becomes the most important thing. Of course, we're focused on ourselves, but in a really shallow way. Jibun chushin in a hontoni asai kind of way, right? It's about sharing selfies, not actually being in the moment. I like this. This looks like a 2,000-year-old picture of a Roman taking a selfie, but it's actually an announcement, okay? This is in the Louvre. Everyone, the Mona Lisa, but taking I never take selfies. I'm a keen photographer. I worked as a professional photographer, as I said. I don't take selfies. I don't want to see my ugly face, okay? I want to see beautiful scenes, okay? Now, sometimes you want to show that you're there, but just take the picture. You don't need to put yourself kind of in there all the time, okay? And this is the Vatican, the center of the Catholic Church. Catholics believe, St. Peter, the first disciple of Jesus Christ, is entombed there. But hey, I'm in the Vatican. I'm walking around on Tomb of Peter. Look at me. It's like, if God is present there, he's thinking, okay. It's just a bad look, literally. So there's lots of attributes I think we need to live well. Curiosity, hawkiship. I think that's absolutely number one, okay? And empathy, kindness, regard for other, openness to influence, initiative. I say get up and go. I'll be really honest, the one thing that worries me so much with young Japanese guys now is they often don't have get up and go. I have a big class, Introduction to Business, 140 students. And I say, okay, please form yourselves into groups of 6 to 7, okay? Lots of the international students jump up, get organized. Japanese guys are like, oh, doshu. I was like, hey guys, there's 15 here. I said 6 to 7. Doshita hogai. Get up off your ass and form some. Sato, yaro yo. I call out numbers. It's like, okay, if I assign people to groups, okay, group 3, group 3, group 3, group 3, I'm walking around, I'm calling it 5 or 6 times. And then I say, if someone in group 3 does not answer, you all fail. Oh, group 3. It's like, sasato yeyo. Okay. So just have a spark, that kind of get up and go, that initiative. If you see a young woman getting on the subway with a baby car, about to get caught, jump up, give her a hand. Help. you'll feel good about yourself. They will appreciate it as well. I think that's just that get up and go. Why? There are many reasons why people don't do this. They're a little bit shy. They don't, 目立ちたくないとか. Okay? まあいいや. Be a bit shameless, okay? To be successful, to be a good citizen, sometimes you have to take a risk. You want to help someone? They don't need your help. They say thanks, but no thanks. Okay, good. Show initiative. The other thing I want to emphasize is quality, okay? In your daily life, whatever you do, focus on quality. I always say to my son, とにかく何かをちゃんとやって、最後までに、丁寧に。Okay, 何でもいいから。Doesn't really matter what it is. You know, he got into making Gundam プラモデルね。すごく丁寧にいろんなコンディショニングしてて、bought him lots of kind of gear, airbrush and stuff like that. And it's great. I don't care what you do. Just do something well. 何でも中途半端にやるのはダメだね、この時代に。Okay, so we have to have an orientation to quality. Okay, Japan has wonderful tradition of artisanship, modern and traditional. But pay attention to the good, the beautiful, okay? And I just mentioned this guy, Lucian Freud, the grandson of Sigmund Freud. He painted every day, every single day until he died at 88. Only 2 days before he died did he stop painting, okay? And he worked intensely as an artist. This is what he lived for. But that painting was his thing. But if you don't have a passion for anything, if you don't know what you want to do, don't worry. Just whatever you do, just do it well. Tidying your room, whatever. 何かをちゃんとして. Just get in the habit. Okay. Story. I just want to say, telling stories. We live in stories. We explain the world in stories. We don't know truth. We have stories about the world. Donald Trump believes that tariffs are a good idea. Bad story, okay? He has many bad stories in his head, and he is ruling the world. So we want stories that are good stories. Also, we need to tell our story to other people. And this is, I think, the problem with the Japanese enmyo, ne? Japanese are often quiet, okay? International students are out there telling their stories. You have to learn to speak up, to put yourself out there, to show your true personality, your uniqueness, okay? Also, when we don't update our story, this is the problem. When we're still living by a story that's 20 years old. We still think Japan is the richest country in Asia. That's a very bad story, okay? It means we miss many opportunities. There are great opportunities doing business with Taiwan and Korea as equal rich nations. Okay, now, Oscar Wilde, very famously, this is depicted in a film, he said, I do need an audience. That was when he got married, okay? なんか聞いてくれる人いないと困る, okay? Because he loved to put himself out and to tell stories. But that putting yourself out there is a fundamental thing we have to do. But don't use ChatGPT for your story, okay? Don't use a cliche. Here, it's like a space dedicated to enriching experiences, curated design, and authentic stories. If you ask ChatGPT about being authentic, they will give you a completely inauthentic response. So this is the irony, is that everyone is saying exactly the same inauthentic thing about their authenticity. So don't say it, show it, and show your uniqueness. And this is my Junjapan pitch, my selling point. Every time you make a grammar mistake in English, if you have a Japanese accent, that is great because it means it's authentic. Okay? Drives me crazy now. I call centers and I think I'm talking with someone, and then I realize, no, this is an algorithm. This is a computer. It's too perfect. It's too perfect. When students use ChatGPT to write their essay and give it to me, I know it straight away. It's too perfect. There are no mistakes. Okay? So, 文法間違いだらけで、日本の独自のアクセントとかもあるのはすっごくいいんですよ。Okay? Your imperfection is a sign of your authenticity. And I want to tell us a little story, and we're close to time. In the traditional weavers, the makers of carpets in Persia, modern Iran, very deliberately, they left imperfections. They said to try to be perfect was an insult to God. Only God is perfect. So the very best craftsmen very deliberately tied a miss knot, or if they made a small mistake, they deliberately left the small mistakes. 完璧に目指すと、神様に失礼っていう昔からの考え方あるね。逆に最近誰でも最近完璧にできる。もう本当にありがちのどうでもいい英語で言うとクリシェのことしか出せないならね。チャット GPT が完璧すぎる。基本的にみんなが言ってきたことの完璧なまとめ出す。でも自分の独自の声とか自分のオリジナリティが全くない。So embrace your imperfections. Okay? I can't give you advice on this. I can just say you should be honest about this problem. Lots of people will say, you didn't go to Waseda to do that. せっかくWaseda行ったのに、それやる？その生き方でいい？ Okay. まあいいや。Okay. You can often go in very unexpected directions. I have zemise who decided they wanted to cook. They wanted to be chefs. They wanted to run restaurants. They didn't go to Tsuji cooking school. They came to Waseda. My hairdresser, I've been going to for 10 years. He graduated from Keizai Gakubu in Meiji, but then he decided to be a hairdresser. And he's really successful in what he does and really happy. So there are many paths. Okay. If you want to make yamcha, okay. You don't need to say we create yamcha or dim sum, okay? But if that's what you want to do, maybe you become the dim sum, yamcha kind of, grandmaster of Tokyo or something. Of course, you need adaptability. You need flexibility, adaptive efficiency. And then finally, I just want to emphasize many modes of living. And I'm really busy, so I don't watch much TV and I don't watch my YouTube, but every Sunday I watch one YouTuber and it's always my reward after I've done lots of work. I watch this guy, Martijn Dulaard. He's from the Netherlands, from Holland, and he bought this stone cottage in the mountains in Italy, near Torino, for 300万ぐらい? Okay. And he's been renovating it. And he has 791,000 subscribers, okay? Some of his videos are like 5 million views. This one he put up I watched half of it last night, okay? I'm saving the other half, okay? 204,000 views already. And what's he doing in his video? He feeds his chickens, he makes coffee, he does some concreting. He's stacking some rocks to build a workshop, okay? Huge numbers of people want to watch other people's authentic experience of them living their unique good life. This is the single largest booming category now on YouTube. This is hundreds of thousands of people all over the world watch some guy. And last night, where I stopped the video, his chicken, okay, his rooster, okay? And there are thousands of comments. People tell all these stories. My son died 2 days ago, but hearing your rooster brought me tears of joy. So, wow, the little things in life, if they authentically share them, people can feel a very direct connection with that. And I suggest just checking it out and try to understand, because now people are talking about this. Why is this so popular? Okay, it's because it's authentic, it's pure, it's hard work, it's honest, it's not TikTok, Instagram, fake, pretending to be a princess, but actually in debt and all just a facade. Okay, so seek your own unique good life, and thank you very much. Cheers, guys.